Hey friends, welcome to Your Story Matters podcast. My name is Michaela, and I am so happy you're here. My hope for this show is that we experience the power of storytelling and understand that we are the main characters in our story so that we can live as our truly authentic selves. You're in the right place to hear real stories that will challenge, inspire, and encourage you on your personal growth journey. I hope you enjoy. Today on the show is Michael Cantwell. Michael is a recovered alcoholic pursuing an MA in clinical psychology with a passion for getting in the trenches to help those who cannot help themselves. He is recently a first-time dad to Wyatt and married to his wife, Skylar. Michael also hosts the podcast Sober Psychology. He enjoys sports, movies, nerding out on nonfiction books, and is an avid researcher. Michael is genuinely intrigued by how the minds of people worked. He is saved by grace, given more chances than he deserves. Michael's life goal is to help break the stigma of mental health and addiction. Without further ado, here's our conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Your Story Matters podcast. I am so happy that you've taken time out of your day to spend it with me. And y'all, we're in for a really good time today. Please welcome Michael Cantwell to the show. Michael, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. All right, we're just going to get into it because eights like to have directness given to them. So what is your story, Michael? Take it away.
Man, how long do y'all have?
Long as you want.
Yeah, I grew up in a very small town, very, conservative, reserved. Everybody knows you wherever you go. My high school was across the street from the university that I went to. And so with that comes this persona. You're expected to be this certain person, or you project those expectations. So I think for my childhood, I have an abusive alcoholic father. I've got an emotionally abusive mother, but we pretended to be perfect to everybody else. So at a very early age, I had this definition of who I was supposed to be. I'm the oldest of 12 grandkids. I'm the oldest of my 3 siblings. I'm supposed to be Superman, rocket scientist, all this kind of stuff. And so I was a liar from very early on, manipulated. My parents, when they got divorced, I learned to manipulate. I learned to work people. Going through high school, I wasn't really rebellious. I didn't go to parties. I just played sports and was in all the clubs and then, went home, hung out with my friends. I was always fishing or playing video games, watching movies, whatever. Then college rolls around. And again, like I said, it's right across the street. Well, I was introduced to alcohol. I was introduced to partying. I was introduced to this whole new grouping of people that were coming in from out of town to enjoy my hometown. This is my backyard. And I realized in that moment, the first time that I drank, I can be whoever I wanted to be. I don't have to be the perfect kid anymore. I don't have to pretend to be anybody. And when you have alcohol involved in that, it breaks down those barriers. And I quickly, within the first 3 years of being in college, became this, I see it as a monster now, but became this completely different person. I slowly became who I thought everyone wanted me to be. Take all of that, fast forward to 2014, 2015, I moved to a different town. I got married and those problems carried on with me. I moved to Waco, Texas and started a life there. Again, a new place. Nobody knew me. I got to be whoever I wanted to be. So I created this persona, convinced an entire city that I was some ex-collegiate baseball player and I was this super successful business guy because when, Michael's drinking whiskey, he becomes the philosopher. And then when he's got all the alcohol in his system, he becomes this invincible human being. And this really began to shape a persona. And all the while I'm losing myself. I'm burying the trauma from my past of what I dealt with my family, my parents, and I'm just carrying it over to friendship into my former marriage. I became this subhuman, lied to everybody. I was never genuine, never real. All of that came to a head. I tried to run away from Waco to go back with my family. I went through a divorce. And when you absolutely cannot stop drinking, when you can't figure out how to work on yourself, it's only a matter of time before rock bottom happens. And my rock bottom happened very quickly. within a matter of a year and a half, I went from having nothing on my record to being in jail 4 times with a DWI and a felony, assault charge. Completely different human being from what I believe myself to actually be, from who I believe myself to actually be. Definitely from who God created me to be. And going through that experience, I think one of the biggest questions that humans naturally ask themselves is, what's my purpose? Why am I here? What am I doing? And I grew up in church, but again, going back to my story, I always pretended to know. I pretended to have a relationship with God. I pretended to be this, you know, little Bible Belt Christian boy that had it all together. I had everyone else's perception of who God was, never my own conception. And it wasn't until I got out of rehab, I was stripped of everything that I thought that I was. I was brought down to ground zero, and that's when God began to rebuild me, my life. I slowly but surely gained my own conception of my higher power, of who I am, of what I wanted to do. And that put me on this incredible journey and this incredible track of, now I'm 36 years old. I just had my first kid almost a year ago. I'm trying to finish my master's in psychology. My goal now, my mission, my purpose is to help other people and is to help those who can't help themselves. And so it's been a fantastic journey. It's been, hear me say this, an exhausting journey, met with so many instances of like, God, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. No, I want to go back to serving me. And, but here we are. And I have this fascination. I have so many angles now from addiction and recovery. I'm able to understand and help people from the Enneagram perspective, from the spiritual perspective, from the being the victim of physical abuse and emotional abuse. And so it's just really cool. It's 2025 and I look back at it and, 5, 6 years ago, I was living in my truck, spending my last $20 on gas station beer, as opposed to living in a house with a child running around. My biggest complaints now are the fact that I'm not getting sleep because my beautiful baby boy is not wanting to sleep. Like, what a great problem to have.
Mhm.
So it's just been this fast track journey of realizing a purpose. And I am passionate about it. You think the honeymoon phase of that whole, like, I want to help people wears off. I may be addicted to that. I may be addicted to the reality that I want to help other people so much. And now we're in this weird learning phase of like, I'm an Enneagram 8. And when I go to help people sometimes, my passion can turn into bullying, it seems, from their perspective, because I
Mhm.
just want you to get it. I want you to understand what I'm saying so much because that it ultimately leads to true freedom. My wife is an Enneagram 9, so that's a poor girl. I feel so bad for her. But it's just been incredible, and it's like every day you wake up to this new bit of awakening and knowledge about
Mm.
yourself. You're scared of it half the time, and then you
Mhm.
explore it, and you're like, "That's not so bad." So it's a great time.
Mm. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. There's so many ways I could go. Let's do it. I kinda like going back to the beginning because with storytelling, you kinda do this chronological thing and then we'll just jump all over, so forgive me, but here we go. I wanna start out with the misconceptions or the myths, I should say, of, like, men and alcoholism. That seems to pair a lot more, and yes, women also struggle with it too, but it seems to be a guy's problem. Right. Women are more emotional. They're more likely to talk about things, to seek out help. Guys, especially growing up, it is don't show emotion, don't cry, just be. And if you don't have that example set for you, you try to find something to mask it. So, kind of walk us through just that whole modality of it seems to be a guy's problem and how it has become this problem for guys and why it's just not fair to always attack them with this.
Sure. Yeah, my most recent podcast episode, we dug into men's mental health, and I think one thing that was an eye opener for me was the history of
Mhm.
how you think that this has only been 5, 10 years. This has been for the course of human history. But you nailed it. Women are seen as and are naturally more in touch with their emotions. They're able to feel a different way than men are, whereas men were expected to be providers. We're expected to be the bastion. We're expected to be the ones on the front lines and at the front door. And so there has been this societal expectation where men don't need to talk about their feelings. You can just deal with it. You could just suppress it and move on because at the end of the day, your ultimate purpose is to provide and to protect. And I do agree with that. I do believe that it is men's role to provide and to protect. If someone breaks into my home, I do not expect my wife to be standing there at the front lines. You go into the back room with the kids, I'll handle the business. However, if I'm downing 3 White Monster energy drinks and then come home and put holes through the drywall because I'm not able to be in touch with my emotions,
Mm,
which one is weaker?
mm,
And so it's very difficult too. And this is one thing that's I'm struggling with right now is because where do men go for solace? Where do we go for that escape? Because you look at the statistics, suicide rates for men are still up
mhm,
in ridiculous numbers. 75% of suicides are men. We're losing so many men per year, per month, per day to suicide. And I genuinely believe it's because of this whole concept of suppressing who we are and what we feel and not knowing how to come out with that. Another scary study that I recently read about was how women perceive men, especially significant others, begin to perceive men when they express genuine raw emotion like fear, anxiety, depression. They begin to lose respect for them. And I believe from what I've learned and what I've seen, I believe that, for instance, something like the feminist movement, absolutely 100% do I agree that women are capable of doing anything and everything in regards to taking over roles in the workforce. However, there are limitations and there are things that women shouldn't have to do. And I think you see this trend of a lot of women that will they'll achieve these high level CEO status, level in business and whatever. They'll get to 40, 45, 50 years old and they're millionaires. They've accomplished everything because again, women are 100% capable of doing that. But they don't have kids. They don't have a spouse. They don't have like a point to settle down. I genuinely believe that's how God created women to be. They're the anchor point. They are the anchor. My wife is the emotional backbone of the entire home. I mean, sure, I could provide a structure. I could be the shield, but she's the emotional backbone. My kids
mm,
growing up starting to see that too. And so with men, and I'm from the South. We don't talk about emotions. The only emotion that we know how to express is anger.
mhm,
That tends to be the default for a lot of men. I'm feared up, I'm scared, I'm hurt. Okay, I'm gonna default to one that I can deal with, which is anger, because it makes me feel more masculine when I can go and punch something, when I can go and chop something, when I can go and break something down and rebuild it, as opposed to saying, "Hey, I'm really struggling right now." I also think that if you look at how our society, especially with technology, has progressed, we've become more and more isolated.
mhm,
And that isolation, you take away the tribes, you take away the village, you take away the community, and you're sitting in your own mind, your own emotions by yourself. And as men, iron sharpens iron. And this is, I last night was like our first night to take my son out and actually have like a full, we're gonna go hang out with friends kind of outing. They have 2 kids that are older than him. They live on a farm. My wife and I have anti-hand bacterial, like, in every room. He's in this is our first kid, like, if he sneezes, we're like, "Here we go. We're red alert, like, what's
yep,
happening?" And then yesterday, we're sitting here playing with chickens and goats and these feral children that have chocolate all over their face, and, we're like, "Oh gosh, he's not gonna make it." Like, this we're on a 24-hour clock. But my friend and I, we talked about this, how there's such a lacking of community for men.
mhm,
I live out here in West Texas where oil field is the only thing that matters. And these guys work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and they come home and they spend just a little bit of time with their family and then they're gone again. And if you don't do that, you're seen as a beta male. I, as someone who's 36 years old and, my wife and I were not killing it financially because we decided I'm going to go finish school. The default is, why are you not working 80 hours a week? And it's like, well, I'm a beta male because I want to talk about emotions. I want to figure out, especially as an 8, someone who is notorious for suppressing emotions and putting up those thick walls. I want to figure it out. So, all that's a long-winded way of saying I think that there's a lot of societal pressure of expectations of men. That's not only coming from men, that's also coming from women's perspective because they've been trained by society as well. But then I also think that there's a lack of community. There's a severe issue with isolation for men. Your job is to go to work, come home, be obedient, do exactly what you're supposed to do. You're a cog in the machine. Go back tomorrow, do it again. That has led to a lot of mental illnesses and weak points for men, the struggle of trying to navigate the treacherous waters of how do I deal with what's going on in here? How do I sit in a room alone by myself? How do I commune with a God that I can't see, that I can't touch, that I can't have any type of tangible relationship with? And so it's very difficult.
Yeah, that is. I have said for years that you are the product of the environment that you were raised in. So if you constantly see alpha male, whatever the heck that actually is, right?
Yeah.
Really and truly, because there is a scale, like it's just it's an ebb and flow kind of thing. I think we're a lot more black and white, and everything is really much more gray in reality. And so you're exactly right. And my thesis, if I would ever go back and do this whole doctorate thing, my fiction wheelhouse is like Regency England. Love it, cannot get enough of it. And I'm reading these books, especially like how women are treated and just like the societal norms. And when it comes to like courting and just life and all these things, it's like my thesis would be how that period of time, even before then, but like how that specific period of time, we are still having the effects now, today, across the pond, centuries later. Of just men are supposed to be this, women are supposed to be this. There is no, come together moment and trying to be a full human. And I think I myself, and I'm sure many others, do not know what it is like to be a guy with no community, number one. And also to be raised in a world where you're a little bit shamed, a lot of it shamed, for having emotions and expressing them. We're just not used to it. And so what do men want when it comes to, hey, I think I'm ready to like say something, do something? How is women, other men, family, friends, whatever, how can we be a more receptive space and a safe space for men to come to us and say, hey, I need to express this?
It's a great question. On average, men want two things. We want to feel safe and we want to feel wanted. In that aspect of wanting to feel wanted, we want to feel like what we're doing matters. We want to feel like we're useful, we're valued. Now, that's not on everybody else because a lot of that is internal. It's the same thing I struggle with a lot in my relationship with my wife is because oftentimes it seems like I'm expecting her to make me happy when that's not her responsibility. I should already be happy. And when we come to that point, I've got to face the harsh realization of why am I not happy? Is there's something going on in me? But I think as far as society, as women, other men, there has to be this level of understanding. And that's difficult for a lot of aspects for men because really where you grow the most is when you have another guy friend who has been through what you've been through. Again, that's where my passion comes from of being a recovered alcoholic and also wanting to go into being a professional therapist. It's very tough to find both together. Oftentimes you find a very good therapist, but they don't understand. I went to two therapists before I went to rehab, and both of them told me I'm not an addict alcoholic because they don't understand. They don't have,
Yeah.
you could read it in a book all you want, but until you can empathize,
Mm-hmm.
this is an 8, by the way, talking about empathy. So everybody go ahead and clip this. But until you can have that genuine source of empathy, it's tough to connect with another human being. So from a female perspective, women can never empathize with men fully because just like men can't fully empathize with women. I would never presume to tell my wife how she's feeling, especially going through pregnancy and all of the things that are involved with that. I can't understand it. I haven't been through that. I've been through it from my perspective. So how do you reach out to a man who's struggling? How do you reach out to a man who's hurting? You're there. You say to yourself, I'm going to be here. I see you in the trenches. I'm going to drop down with you into the trenches, not at my own detriment, but to let you know that there is a way out. I'm going to show you how we're going to crawl out of this. We're going to do this together. There's that perspective. There's also the perspective of saying, "Hey, you're in the trenches. Just look over there. Just shut your mouth for a second. I love you. Shut your mouth. Look over there, and you can just crawl out." There are a lot of different angles, but at the end of the day, there has to be a level of empathy that I think again, men have a hard time with because it makes us feel weak when we begin to empathize. A lot of men have a hard time empathizing because that means that we have to look within ourselves with what we've already dealt with. I think that's just a human to human thing as well. A lot of women probably struggle with this because they're suppressing a lot. Whether or not women have the ability to be in touch with their emotions, how much of those emotions have you worked through and dealt with? So when you're faced with someone who needs you, when you're faced with someone who could really benefit from a relationship with you, how can you help them out if you're not willing to pay attention to what's going on with yourself? So there's always this buffer with the empathy.
Yes.
I have a hard time with the, again, we're pointing men in a direction of saying, hey, just go get some therapy, just go get some help. And men are doing this. I think I saw it last night where 91% of men who committed suicide reached out for help first.
Mm,
It's not working. Something's not working.
mm,
So what's the solution to it all? I wish I had the magic answer. For me, it's faith. In the throes of my addiction with alcohol and being alone and isolated and struggling. And again, I know I've said it a million times, I'm an 8. There are very few things that when I set my mind to it, I don't do. And that's not ego and arrogance. That's because I am outrageously determined on every level to accomplish a goal. But when I couldn't quit drinking alcohol, that is when the thoughts of ending it all came into play. No one could help me. No one could talk to me the right way. No one could understand me. It wasn't until I was around a bunch of other addicts and alcoholics that I got the help that I needed. God used those people in ways that I've never thought possible for other people to help. So I think from a female perspective too, it's trying your best as best you can to figure out what is going on in that guy's head, but being okay with saying, hey, I can only connect with you so much. I don't know what's going on. Tell me what you need. But at the end of it all, allowing that person to feel safe. If that man is going to express their emotions to you, hold that, cherish that, because men don't express that very well. And if they're willing to do it, you better hold it like a fine set of china. Like, do not drop it and say, okay, you're good now. You can say it again tomorrow if you need to. I'm
yeah.
still here. I'm not going anywhere. Just because you have baggage, just because you have some BS in your background, like, I'm still here for you. So
Mm,
that creates that level of safety.
yeah.
And then also letting that person know slowly but surely over time. It doesn't, everybody has different ways of doing it. I'm very weird when people compliment me, but it's just getting to this point of saying, I'm going to challenge you to continue to do this. I'm going to keep pushing you to be the best version of yourself that you are, but I'm not going anywhere because you're expressing that. Slowly but surely you'll see men crawl out of their hole and they feel appreciated, they feel wanted, they feel safe. That all that does though is open the conversation. There's going to be a wave of craziness that comes from that, of dealing with a lot of suppressed trauma and emotions and anger, and it's difficult. I do not envy women when it comes to dealing with men's mental health because we don't know how to deal with it, and it's a scary spot to be in.
And again, it's one of those places where lack of education, resources, community, there hasn't been well established safe spaces, even in a public way. Right. So we're having to try to find all of these private moments. And again, that can be a ripple effect in and of itself, but having those spaces and having open dialogue is the start of everything. So I kind of
Absolutely.
want to ask something from an 8 perspective, because fill me in, I'll never be an 8. Emotionally, I can't handle it. So an 8's core fear is being betrayed
hmm
by others, by themselves. When you got to the point where you couldn't stop drinking, how betrayed by yourself did you feel?
That was the worst. This whole journey, the most difficult aspect of it was forgiving me, and because again, like I said, I became this monster that I didn't even recognize. But that level of self-betrayal, it's a weird thing to try and put into words, but it's even deeper than how a parent feels when you're disappointed at your child for doing something wrong. It's like there nobody other than God, nobody knows me more than I know myself. But then you don't allow yourself to get to know yourself when you're constantly looking for the escape, for the
Mhm.
dopamine hit. You're
Yep.
just looking for, I want to suppress who I am. And so when you see how far you've come, and for me, I don't think I realized it until I got sober, until I was in rehab. And step 4, is the inventory. If you're going through, the Alcoholics Anonymous, but step 4 is inventory, and that one's tough because you're scratching at a lot of scabs that have not fully healed over, but they've been okay for a little bit. Like, you're not having to deal with them right now, and then you're just opening up every wound that you have, and you start to really be faced with, why did I do that?
Mm.
I tell people all the time, there's not one thing on my journey that I regret because I learned from it all, other than the pain that I caused other people along the way. I've had a hard time dealing with that. I took away, with my first wife, I took away the safety. I took away her feeling of the safety, and she may carry that with her in every relationship for the rest of her life. I hope not, but I would imagine, because I do. I mean, I would. And so that self-betrayal is that one for me personally has been the most difficult. There are still times where I'm going, I mean, because I constantly am doing inventory with myself. I don't want to go back to who I was. It's not that I live in this fear of being that person again, but it's just such a disappointment. And it's you feel like you let yourself down when you've also felt like you were your only advocate.
Mm,
And that is a hard spot to be in. That's lonely. And again, I'm grateful that I have other addicts, alcoholics that I can talk to that have been through the same thing, because no matter what platitude other people try and offer out of the kindness and genuine care, they can never reach that for me. So that self-betrayal is difficult. Again, not to make it sound like a default, not to make it sound like I'm just trying to create a cliche here, but for me, there is no other way to overcome that other than a relationship with a higher power. And, for me, that's God. And if I didn't have a relationship with God, I would not be sober right now. Again, we're 11 months into this journey of raising a child. I think total in 11 months, I've probably slept 30 minutes. It's at least what it feels like. I'm 36 years old trying to finish, a master's degree when I see all my other friends out having careers and working, and so that the devil of comparison comes in and it steals that joy instantly. I see the struggles that my wife goes through with pregnancy and with everything involved with that, where there's only so much I could do to reach her. So there's just so much, there's so many difficulties, and all of that could come down to the same thing that I've already experienced with betraying myself and letting myself down. Or I could just lay that at God's feet and be like, what do I do with this? Because I don't know. And again, I'm just going to keep hitting the nail on the head. I'm an 8, and saying I don't know is not an option, but that's what I've been doing. It's humility. I got to humble myself and to be able to be rebuilt in the appropriate ways. So the self-betrayal, to answer your question, that's a deep one. That's a deep cut. That's very difficult. And for me, there's only a certain level that you can achieve with community and with yourself and with friends and with mindfulness and whatnot. But there has to be a higher power that fills you with this level of energy, this level of power that you can't possess yourself. Your self-will cannot pull yourself out of that self-betrayal feeling.
that's good. That's so good. On the other side, looking back, what would you tell your 8-year-old, 18-year-old self that you know now that you didn't know then?
You're worth more than what you think people think of you. And there are a lot of levels to that, because again, it's not just how everybody treats me, it's how I chose to believe everyone thought of me. And I think I'm big on this idea. I'm big on this idea of formal education in America needing part of the curriculum needs to be understanding addiction and recovery. We
Absolutely.
need to, because
Yeah.
how many people do you know? And if you're being honest, probably yourself as well, because that's how I grew up. When you see someone struggling with drugs and with alcohol, you immediately look at them as if they're cast outs, as if they shouldn't exist, as if they're a scourge of the earth and you can't connect with them. These are real people who are really hurting. And if we just had even a limited understanding of what alcoholism and addiction is, what mental health issues actually are, we wouldn't be scared to approach it. Instead of coming from a place of judgment, we'd come from a place of empathy. I feel bad for that person. How can I help? Step 12 in the program is helping others. That is why I stay sober. And for me, looking at the child who was abused by an alcoholic father and then cast out by an emotionally abusive mother, looking for the 18-year-old who was just trying to find a personality and identity, some point of connection and belonging, I would just look at them and sit them down and say, why do you feel like you have to fit into everybody else's image?
Uh,
You are. That's it. That's all you need to be. You are. You exist, and you are great, and you can be better, sure. And you should try and be better. However, you don't have to be what you think everybody wants you to be. I think that alone, that knowledge, that gaining of that perception would just change a trajectory of life, period, for everybody. We're always looking for belonging.
Always. When in your journey did the Enneagram find you? And then what was
Mm.
your reaction to, I am an 8? That's the most 8 thing to say.
Oh man. So side story on that. I met Susan Stabile at a conference in Austin, Texas, and they did the whole panel. It was basically, they were pretty much just talking about marriage and parenting. But when I met her and we had maybe a 20-minute conversation, she paused, she grabbed my hand and she pulled me in. She goes, I want to let you know you're probably the most straight line 8 I've ever met in my life. And she said, that could be a compliment. It could also not be. I was like, okay, thank you. So, my first marriage there, I had read the 5 love languages. I'd read a lot of books, and a lot of them were Christian influenced books on marriage and relationships. And I had I was in a job at the time that did the Myers-Briggs personality test, and I hated it. I was so mad. I got so mad at the idea that what do you mean that this is just who I am and I can't ever change it? Such an 8 response, by the way. And so the wife of the owner, the business owner, she said, "Well, why don't you look at the Enneagram and see if it parallels to any of your Myers-Briggs results?" And sure enough, I sat down, I did the Enneagram. I talked to my ex-wife about it, and we both did the Enneagram. We went to conferences about it, learned everything I could. I became so fascinated at the intricacies of the Enneagram and how I felt like it was a lot more in depth than Myers-Briggs. I liked the idea of the wings, but I also hated it because I just want you to give me one number. I don't want any of the extra stuff. Give me a number. I liked the triads. I liked how it categorized everything, and every time I would read about it, it was explaining it better and better and better, and it helped. That was probably the first time that I had ever read anything that helped me discover myself. And so, again, that was at the very beginning of the end of my alcoholism, and so I just kind of abandoned it at a certain point because I stopped looking inward.
Mm.
And then fast forward to getting sober and trying to start a life again, and that was a huge it's been a huge point for me to go back and discover, okay, now you're sober, you're of a different mindset. Let's figure out who you are. Let's figure out why you're doing these things. And like as an 8, when I'm healthy, I go to a 2, right? And I see that with myself. I will give you everything and anything that I have, even to my detriment. I will pour out everything I have because as an 8, I'm a defender of the underdog. I want to champion you. I want you to win. But when I'm unhealthy, which I would probably consider myself now kind of in this unhealthy pattern of going to a 5, I'm the researcher. And I sit here and I'm doing all my schoolwork and I'm gathering all of my information that I can, and I isolate in that. And so, but if I didn't have the Enneagram, I wouldn't pay attention to that like I do now. I'm able to maybe dig in, and I'm so bad about, like, I'll watch a movie and I think that I now have to do research on something I found interesting. I'm going to research that for 2.5 hours. I don't
Uh-huh.
remember the rest of the movie, but I know everything about that topic. My wife hates it, by the way. She's like, "Why don't you just watch the movie?" Yeah, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, good point." So the Enneagram for me is just it's awesome to help you figure out where the stepping stones are to the next path, and the fact that it connects everything with your spiritual journey as well is outrageously powerful. And then now that I'm learning about it, it has helped me help so many friends who are struggling with their marriage, struggling with whatever's going on internally, to say, "Okay, well, let's help you define that first before you start just scattershotting and hoping that you hit a target." It's fascinating. I absolutely huge advocate for the Enneagram.
Yeah, we love it around here too. Would you it sounds like you would agree, but correct me if I'm wrong. It seems as though addiction comes from there's something I'm lacking or there's something I'm trying to mask, avoid, all of the things. Going out and finding something. And you had mentioned earlier in college years, like putting on different personas and just trying to present a better picture than the one that was already there. Do you think if we as individuals and as society and onwards and outwards took the time to know ourselves a little bit more, would that help not only in the recovery but also just would we step into the realms of addiction if we knew ourselves a little bit better, knowing it's not going to fix anything? But do you think that would be a stepping stone to help?
Absolutely. I think a lot of times the turning or the downward spiral comes from the fear of trying to understand more, because it's kind of like Pandora's box, right? The more you try and understand, the scarier it can get. The I forgot which incredible philosopher said it right now, which is frustrating, but the more I learn, the less I understand kind of
Yep.
concept.
Yep.
And without some point of guidance, you can dig into whatever's going on internally. But if you don't have ways to define it, if you don't have ways to help you navigate it, you're eventually going to be overwhelmed and lost. And that's for everybody. I think the hard thing with addiction is that at its base, at its core, it's a disease. And that's hard for people who aren't addicts and alcoholics to understand, because I cannot tell you how many people who know me very well have the mentality of like, "Well, why don't you just stop?" And I have to explain to them, if I could have stopped, I mean, the people who know me are like, "Well, you're so stubborn. Anything that you do, you can." I'm like, "I understand. That's why the frustration exists. I could not stop." And that sounds like an excuse for me to continue to drink is what it sounds like. And I get it. But the reality is that addiction can hit anybody. It's a genetic thing. It's a chemical thing. However you want to define it. There isn't any conclusive evidence to help you understand why addiction exists, but it exists and it is a disease. So in the midst of that, instead of avoiding, instead of finding ways to get your cheap and quick dopamine hits, instead of finding ways to bury or suppress, learning who you are and figuring out why I'm doing what I'm doing. Why do I default to that? This is why addicts and alcoholics are told to do constant inventory. And even when you get sober, there's a thing called a 10th step where you should have a sponsor. You should have someone, okay, I went and did this inventory and I'm struggling and now I need to go tell on myself. And it sounds childish, but when you present that to someone else who's hearing it from a different perspective, it's incredible how God uses those people to call you out for things that you may not have seen yourself. But part of that discovery is just saying, okay, I want to know why I keep doing this exact same pattern. If we're continuing, as Einstein said, if we're continuing to do the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, that's the definition of chaos. I don't want to live in chaos anymore. I want that peace. I want that harmony. I want that serenity that God promises. But he doesn't say, "Oh, I'm just handing this out like candy." Like, you gotta work for it. It takes a lot of constant maintenance and work, and praise God for that. I'm so grateful that you get to do maintenance on yourself constantly. Like, I get to keep working. I'm not gonna be the same person in 10 years that I am now. So much is
Right.
gonna change. So I
Sure.
can't just expect to say, "Okay, I'm at the best place that I've been at mentally. I have emotional regulation. I'm wonderful. I'm great. I feel peaceful." That may change in 2 weeks. I don't know. I can't just, rest on my laurels and kick back and expect it to be okay. So I think the Enneagram is fascinating for that because it is evolving with you. It's
Mhm.
already evolved. It just gives you that evolutionary path. And that's why the Enneagram is so powerful.
Absolutely. What conversations have you and your wife had about your son in terms of what he's going to learn firsthand about addiction, about recovery? And granted, he's still young, but he's picking up on patterns, right? He's looking at the two of you, understanding a lot from mom and dad. What do you want him to know as soon as he's able to comprehend about your life, your story, and what you want for him?
I don't want him to be scared of it. I want him to understand as best he can what it actually is, and that even though it exists and people struggle with it, it doesn't make you a monster. You are not your decisions. Your decisions are things that you did, whether they're good or bad. That doesn't define who you are. I've done this cool thing right, before when we found out that my wife was pregnant, and I started this journal and I write consistently in it and I write to him because there are a lot of times, especially as an eight, as a man, as someone who is overwhelmed by not only himself, but everything else in the world, I don't do a great job of expressing myself and my emotions. But when I write, I'm calm and I'm peaceful and I'm thinking through it. It takes everything from that amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, and I can really work into it and discover a lot more. But I started keeping a journal to him. That journal is packed with honesty that I wish I had given myself early on. And I plan on giving it to him on his 18th birthday because one of my big fears is that my kid's going to be an addict alcoholic. It's genetic. My dad had it, his dad had it. Hopefully the chain breaks and my kid just goes through a party phase and then he's done. But if he's like me, his party phase carried on for 10 to 12 years and left a path of destruction. I want him to understand that one, if you have it, it's okay. And two, if you have it, you're not a monster. There are ways out of it. I think as finite beings, it's very difficult for us to understand the concept of infinite grace and mercy. I still struggle with that with God. It's like, why would you forgive me for that? Like, why, um, or even having more of the earthly mentality or the Old Testament mentality of like, God, what I got to offer something to you for what I did, and that's the scary part is God saying, no, I've already done it for you. Don't worry about it. And as someone who grew up in a very harsh environment, I don't understand it. So yeah, my wife and I have talked a lot about that of like we're not going to hide. I'm not going to hide things from him. And obviously when he's, 5 years old and can grasp the English language a little bit better, it's not like I'm going to tell him, "Oh, let me tell you time that dad had planned on ending his life because he couldn't quit drinking." Like, no, we're not going to have that conversation at that point. But when he can conceptualize it, and I feel like God's leading me in a direction of saying, okay, he's ready. We'll have that conversation. Again, part of why I am sober is because I don't have to hide anything anymore, and I'm brutally honest to the point. I mean, honestly, there are points where my wife's like, could you just stop being honest for a second? Could you like maybe tone it down? I mean, you're at about a 9. I need you to be at about a 2 right now. But it helps me. I mean, I start off with one little lie that snowballs into years of lying and manipulating and hiding. So I will not do that with my kid. And we'll see how it goes. To be determined. We can revisit this conversation in 18 years and I'll let you know how it's looking. But
Let's do it. We'll put it on the
yeah.
books pronto. No, and regardless of whatever happens, for him, I think honesty and open communication is what so many of us, did not have. Right. So already there's a leg up in terms of transparency and honesty and communication and just keeping that open dialogue for like, hey, if you have any questions, if there's something that feels off to you or you want more clarification, I think that's what a lot of people need is just someone to say, like, you can come and ask me anything. So I think
I agree.
already he has just a leg up for just having some very honest conversations. So cannot wait to revisit in 18 years. That would be
Yeah,
so
yeah.
fun.
Well, let you know how it's going. I mean, it could be good, could be bad. I don't know. We'll see.
Absolutely. Just do a thumbs up, thumbs down, and we'll know.
Yeah.
Michael, as we're wrapping up here, thank you again for your honesty. I know it's tough for eights to be vulnerable. It's tough for anybody to be vulnerable, especially when there is a past that so many people, as you've said, like will look down and shame and outcast. But thank you for doing the work and for being that light. Once school is done, there's nothing stopping you, man. Like, that. I'm just affirming what you know in yourself. Like, there will be a lot of people helped and a lot of people changed already. And so, what is your next chapter? How do you see the story unfolding? Kind of what's the grand dream now when school's done and kind of you're on your own to be that game changer?
Yeah. A 5-year plan is to be able to intertwine my certification as a therapist with every approach and angle that I can, with the Enneagram, with addiction and recovery, to be able to just unlock people in general. 15-year plan, I would love to open my own recovery center and not do the insurance grab nonsense that exists in America today with addiction and recovery help, but to offer people genuine scholarship help, to be able to have donors that will be able to back it, to get people off the streets, to help those who can't help themselves, and to be able to give them the real, raw, genuine truth of, hey, let's turn this around because you can. It can be turned around. And to be able, and I would love to offer it full scale. This is getting into the thick of it, but I'd love to offer free dental work for guys, because a lot of addicts, a lot of the drugs that you'll do, it'll degrade your teeth. I'd love to offer free tattoo removal for some of these, tattoos that people get in the midst of their, they want them removed, or face tattoos, and they got to go get a job. There's a lot of hurting. There's a lot of hurting in the addiction and recovery world. And a lot of guys, good human beings and girls, who are met with this reality of, I am not the person that I've been choosing to be. And now I want to take what God's given me and I want to go with it. But they're limited with a lot of these minor things that can be fixed. There's just not a lot of help for them out there. They tend to be outcast. So 10, 15-year plan, I'd love to create something to just give people a full scale turnover, makeover, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and say, okay, go back and be a good husband, be a good father, be a good wife, be a good anything and everything that you can be. Go serve God the way that you're called to do it.
That's good. We'll do another check-in in 1 year, in 18 years.
Yeah, 18 years is
For
our
your
marker.
son.
So
5, 10, 15. Michael, you can just be the recurring, I don't even know what you want to call it. We'll figure out a word, but you can just be the recurring whatever on the podcast. I think that'd be amazing. Hopefully we're doing it in 15, 18 years. Michael, thank you so much for your time today and your heart and sharing all of this. I really, really appreciate it.
thank you, Michaela.
Thanks for listening. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, give it a rating, and review while you're at it. It really goes a long way. And check out the show notes for all the ways to stay connected with me and our guests. Until the next episode.